The living room was quiet, bathed in the flickering blue glow of the television. 14-year-old Shawn Edwards sat alone, engrossed in a scary movie, the kind of thing teenagers love to watch late at night. His mother had gone to bed, leaving him to enjoy his film in peace. The clock ticked past midnight on that cold January evening in 1986, the kind of night where frost formed on windows and the streets of Middletown, New York, lay still and silent. It was a normal evening in their modest home, until it wasn't. When Shawn's mother woke with a start around 12:30 a.m. and walked back into the living room, the television's eerie glow still illuminated the empty space. The couch where her son had been sitting was now vacant, the blanket he'd been using tossed aside carelessly. The front door wasn't forced open, but it wasn't completely shut either, just slightly ajar, as if someone had left in a hurry. Her calls for Shawn echoed through the empty house, met only with silence. By sunrise, Shawn's lifeless body would be discovered on the cold concrete outside Middletown High School, brutally beaten and stabbed over 24 times. The veteran officer who first arrived at the grisly scene would later tell reporters the murder was unlike any other I've seen in 20 years on the force. And to this day, nearly 4 decades later, no one knows who committed this horrific crime or why they targeted an innocent teenager. Shawn Edwards wasn't just another statistic in some cold case file. He was a vibrant, popular freshman at Middletown High School, with his whole life ahead of him. Friends and teachers described him as the kind of kid who could make anyone laugh, his easygoing personality making him well-liked across different social circles. He played on the junior varsity football team, dreamed of becoming a mechanic, and had recently started showing interest in girls. Typical teenage stuff. But in the weeks leading up to his murder, something subtle yet profound had changed in Shawn's behavior. His closest friends noticed he'd become more withdrawn, more watchful. He started carrying a switchblade knife everywhere he went, something completely out of character for the normally carefree teen. When questioned about it, Shawn would only say he needed protection, but refused to elaborate. His mother recalled finding him staring out his bedroom window at night as if watching for something or someone. The normally sound sleeper began suffering from insomnia, his sheets often tangled from restless nights. Yet whenever pressed about what was troubling him, Shawn would clam up or change the subject. Whatever fear had taken hold of him, he kept it locked away, a decision that may have cost him his life. The crime scene painted a picture of unspeakable violence. Shawn's body was found slumped against the brick exterior of Middletown High's gymnasium entrance, his winter jacket soaked through with blood. The medical examiner would later count 27 separate stab wounds, along with severe blunt force trauma to his head and torso. The attack had been frenzied, brutal, the kind of overkill usually seen in crimes of passion or personal vendettas. Yet nothing was stolen. His wallet still contained a few dollars. His prized football pendant still hung around his neck. Even more puzzling was the complete lack of defensive wounds on Shawn's hands and arms, suggesting he'd either known his attacker or been taken completely by surprise. The murder weapon, likely the same knife Shawn had been carrying for protection, was never found. Investigators theorized the killer must have taken it with them, perhaps as some sort of trophy. The most disturbing detail of all? There were no signs Shawn had been dragged or transported to the school. Footprints in the light dusting of snow suggested he'd walked there willingly, possibly meeting someone he knew. But who would a 14-year-old boy agree to meet in the middle of the night? And why at his own high school? In the immediate aftermath of the murder, detectives pursued every possible lead, no matter how slim. The first person of interest was Shawn's own father, Melvin Edwards. Divorced from Shawn's mother, but still living nearby, Melvin had been the first person she called when she realized Shawn was missing. His behavior during the search raised eyebrows. While most parents would be frantic, Melvin reportedly stopped for coffee at an all-night diner before joining the search. When questioned by police, his answers were evasive, his timeline inconsistent. A polygraph test suggested deception when he denied knowing anything about his son's murder. But without physical evidence linking him to the crime, prosecutors had no case. The Edwards family insisted Melvin, despite his flaws, would never harm his own son. But the cloud of suspicion never fully lifted. He died in 2003 without ever being officially cleared. Then there was the enigma of Mr. Fig, a shadowy figure who became central to one of the investigation's strangest subplots. Multiple neighbors reported seeing a late model sedan parked near the Edwards home that night, its engine running, a lone male figure sitting behind the wheel for hours. One witness claimed to have seen Shawn approach the vehicle before disappearing from view. The description matched a local man known only as Fig, a nickname derived from his last name, Figueroa. Detectives tracked down several individuals with that surname in the area, but none could be placed at the scene. The lead grew colder when the original witness recanted part of their statement, leaving investigators wondering if Mr. Fig had ever existed at all or was merely a figment of collective imagination in a traumatized community. For 6 long years, the case grew colder, the file thicker, with dead ends and unreturned phone calls. Then in 1992, a potential breakthrough emerged from an unlikely source. Timothy Fairweather, a local man who had been a teenager at the time of the murder. In a dramatic jailhouse confession, Fairweather was incarcerated on unrelated charges. He claimed to have witnessed Shawn's murder firsthand. According to his statement, 2 acquaintances, Joey Salgado and Eddie Devlin, had lured Shawn to the high school that night under false pretenses. Fairweather spun a lurid tale involving drug debts, a Colombian cartel enforcer known only as Nelson, and Shawn supposedly messing up a major deal. The story had all the elements of a crime thriller, too many, as it turned out. When pressed for details, Fairweather's account began unraveling. His lawyer proved he had been visiting relatives in Pennsylvania the night Shawn was killed. The Nelson character couldn't be verified. Most damning of all, both Salgado and Devlin had solid alibis. One was in basic training at Fort Benning, the other hospitalized with appendicitis. The district attorney reluctantly dropped the charges, and the case went cold again. Modern forensic techniques have shed little new light on the mystery. In 2015, Middletown PD submitted several pieces of evidence for DNA testing, but the results were inconclusive. Too degraded after decades in storage. The original case files, once meticulously organized, now show signs of wear from being handled by generations of detectives hoping to crack the case. Some reports have gone missing entirely, victims of poor record keeping in the pre-digital age. What remains is a patchwork of theories, none fully satisfying. Could it have been a random thrill killing? Middletown had its share of troubled teens in the 1980s, and the brutality of the attack suggests youthful rage. But no similar crimes occurred before or after, making a serial killer unlikely. Was it drug related? Shawn had no known involvement with narcotics, but the 1980s crack epidemic reached even small towns like Middletown. Maybe he witnessed something he shouldn't have. Could it have been personal? A secret relationship gone wrong? A grudge no one knew about? Shawn's friends insist he had no enemies, but teenagers often hide things from adults. The most haunting possibility is that Shawn's murder was connected to whatever had been frightening him in those final weeks. His sudden need to carry a knife, his sleepless nights, his reluctance to talk about what was bothering him. These weren't the behaviors of a typical teenager. Someone or something had shaken him to his core. Did he try to confront that fear the night he died? Was his murder a preemptive strike to silence him? The answers likely died with Shawn on that cold January night. Today, the case remains officially open but inactive. The original detectives have retired or passed away. Shawn's mother, now in her 70s, still lights a candle for her son every January 16th, the anniversary of his death. The high school where his body was found has been renovated multiple times, the exact spot now covered by an addition to the gymnasium. Only a small group of true crime enthusiasts and amateur sleuths keep the memory alive online, trading theories in obscure forums. Occasionally, a podcast or local news segment will revisit the case, sparking brief flurries of interest before fading back into obscurity. At Shawn's funeral in 1986, Reverend Jesse A. Wilkerson Jr. told mourners, "Just trust in God and justice will come." But earthly justice has remained elusive. The killer, whether still alive or long dead themselves, has never faced accountability. The motive remains locked in the past, known only to those who took part in that night's violence. For Shawn's surviving family and friends, there are only questions without answers, a grief without closure. The murder of Shawn Edwards stands as one of Middletown's darkest unsolved mysteries, a reminder that sometimes, even in small towns where everyone knows everyone, terrible secrets can remain hidden for generations. Perhaps someday, a deathbed confession or a DNA match will finally bring resolution. Until then, Shawn's story remains frozen in time. A 14-year-old boy who stepped out into the night and never came home, his killer vanishing into the same darkness that claimed their victim.